What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today marks the first episode in our draft strategy series this summer. I'll be doing a deep dive into a new research project I did this offseason on Sunday, but this video will not only go over the results from that study, but also updated numbers from the one I did last season, just to include 2022. So sit back, hit the like button, and let's hop into things. We'll start off by answering, is robust RB a good strategy? And the answer sort of depends on, of course, how you define robust RB. I'm going to use the definition of 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds. We'll adjust that definition to close the video just to really see like how aggressive can you be in drafting running backs early before the results start to be like really, really bad. But using that definition, how do things look? If we remember back to the study I did last year, remember I collected over 100,000 ESPN teams per season since 2015, and also knowing that those were not custom leagues, so they all had 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex in the starting lineup. We found that starting off robust RB led to, on average, an increase in around 16% to your championship rate. So you were winning a championship on average more often. The thing was, those numbers were a little bit inflated by just monster performances in 2016 and 2017, where it was almost impossible to win if you didn't go robust RB. In 2020 and 2021, your win rate was unchanged. It wasn't a bad strategy. It just like whether you did it or didn't do it, win rate perfectly neutral. It just didn't matter. It didn't make a difference positively or negatively. The thing is, win rate has actually been trending down for that strategy. Again, we're talking about robust RB at the moment since 2017. The trend, I have this on the website if you guys want to see it. It's like historical draft strategy results. You can see from 2017 going to current, it's moving down. It's becoming less valuable of a strategy, less effective of a strategy over the years. And that's confirmed when you add in last year's numbers. Teams that started off with 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds last season won their championship 8.3% less often when compared to all other teams. That was the worst outcome since 2015, which we know was historically a very, very bad season for running backs. Basically, all top-end running backs were injured or busted in 2015. It was the birth of RB0 really going mainstream. RB0 was created before that, but people really started to buy in after the 2015 season because it was so effective. Of course, that led to, like I said before, 2016 and 2017 were incredible years to not do that because everyone overreacted. But the point is, robust RB has been slowly becoming less and less optimal since 2017. And last year, there was actually a noticeable difference in win rate. Again, 2020, 2021 didn't matter. It was neutral. But last season, it did negatively impact you if you did that. Now, it's not like you couldn't have won, right? Like last season, many teams started off, let's say, Eckler and Barkley. They kind of worked out if you had a mid-round pick, you got Eckler and then Barkley. I'm sure those teams did perfectly well, right? It's just that it's obviously not great that on average, you're reducing your championship rate by 8% in a season. And we can actually confirm this with the new study I did this summer. Like I said to start the video, I'm going to do a very in-depth breakdown on what this study was, how I came up with the numbers, how effective it is, and the pitfalls from it on the Sunday video. But I'll give like a quick TLDR on that right now, just so you have like a general understanding of where the numbers came from. But basically, I simulated how effective different strategies are over time by not only simulating drafts and player outcomes for each build, but also 500 years worth of outcomes for each. So instead of just looking back at what's happened over the past 8 years, we can recognize that, well, 8 years is a relatively small sample and simulate results based off those 8 years just to gain a better understanding of what's going to happen on average. Because think about it, like strategies can win or lose leagues based off 2 to 3 individual players busting or getting hurt in a given season. So if we only have a sample size of 8, that's only 8 dice rolls that we're working off of to determine the effectiveness of a strategy over time. That's just not enough. Now, simulations are not perfect. Like I said, I'll go over the pitfalls in the Sunday video, but they do a really good job of smoothing over busts and injuries that can randomly occur at elevated or suppressed rates in any given year and kind of cloud our perception of how effective a strategy is over time. So again, we did 500 years worth of simulator results for a bunch of different builds, and then we can look over those results and see, well, which ones are the most effective over time. What I found was that robust RB was used in just 16% of the top 1% of builds. Now, that's a much better outcome than the more risky strategies, which would be like drafting 0, going RB 0, or I guess like, I don't even know if there's a name for it, but if you wanted to draft like 4 or 5 running backs in the first 5 rounds, those are both risky, right? They're at the polls for what you'd want to do. They don't come out as effective, but it's still a lower percentage than what can be considered optimal, or at least what we should strive to get to. What is slightly more effective is hero RB, or some people call it anchor RB. I'm sure many of you have heard of it at this point, but it's basically you draft one running back as your hero, as your anchor, and then you wait until after the 5th round to draft another. So you're really just like, that's your guy, right? If they bust, well, tough. Like that is, you're probably not going to have an amazing season. But if you drafted Austin Eckler last season, you used him as your hero, you didn't draft another until, let's say, like round 6, round 7, that's hero RB. That's a build that can be very effective, and it is slightly more effective than robust RB. That build was found at a slightly higher rate among the top 1% of builds, both overall and as a percentage of its total usage. If that was a little bit confusing, that last part, I will explain it again, and I think it's going to be very clear in a second, but just know that hero RB comes out as slightly more optimal than robust RB. Though, interestingly, it hasn't been amazing when we look at the ESPN study over the last 8 years. It's on a clear upward trend since 2017, coinciding with the fall of robust RB. So hero RB is getting better, robust RB is getting worse. But it's been a neutral to positive strategy the last like 3 years. So it was like kind of not amazing. It's getting up there, but again, the overall results, if you just took like the average performance of hero RB over the last 8 years, it's not amazing. My guess is that the ESPN data I collected as part of all these years' studies is slightly biased towards better builds. The thinking is basically that there are a ton of free leagues in there that are both like not super competitive. That doesn't totally matter, because if a build is optimal, it's going to be good in a competitive or a non-competitive league, but that you have a lot of like casual people in those leagues that maybe don't know what they're doing. And so it's possible some will like go hero RB, RB0, but have no idea what they're actually doing, no idea how to close under those strategies, no idea that they're even using those strategies. And so if they do it ineffectively, or if their team starts off slow and they don't know how to fix it, then it's going to be like, oh, look, here's a data point for a team that did RB0 and it didn't work. My simulations combat this because I'm able to feed it good builds, right? I'm not going to feed it builds that like didn't draft a running back. I can feed it builds that make sense. And it also knows how to set starting lineups, and it's not going to quit, right? My simulation is not going to get to week 7 and be like, I don't want to play anymore, and not set its starting lineup, right? That doesn't come in to the simulation. So while hero RB doesn't grade out well when we're looking at ESPN League results over the past 8 years, it does grade out better than robust RB when we look at the simulations. Now, there's an argument to be made that the same is true for RB0, and it's an argument I made in the RB0 video last season, again saying it shows up as ineffective when we look at ESPN, But since a lot of people just mess up, don't know what they're doing, perform terribly early, and then quit, maybe it's more effective than we're giving it credit for. And I still think that's true, but my simulations found that it's not a great build. It only shows up in 4.5% of the top 1% of builds, which is by far the lowest amount among 0, 1, 2, or 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Overall, and again, this is when I said it'll make a little bit more sense now, 4.5% of the top builds, so of that top 1%, drafted 0 running backs in the first 5 rounds compared to a total usage of 5.9%. So that means that among all of the simulations that I have given the model, 5.9% of them were RB0. So that's like our total, right? Among the top 1%, so of the best builds in the simulation, only 4.5% of those are RB0. So it's not optimal to do. You've got a bigger percentage among the overall. Among the good ones, there's a lower percentage of RB0. If we're looking at drafting 1 running back in the first 5 rounds, that was found in 25.5% of top builds, 28.5% total usage. Again, slightly suboptimal. Again, drafting 1 running back is hero RB. Drafting 2 running backs in the first 5 rounds, that was found in 53% of top builds compared to total usage of only 38%. So obviously, we're going to touch on that in a second. That's optimal. 2 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Drafting 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds, found in 16% of top builds, 19.5% of total builds. Again, slightly suboptimal. And then I probably should not need to tell you, 4 running backs, 5 running backs in the first 5 rounds, incredibly suboptimal to do. Don't do it unless it's like egregious. Like if you get into the 5th round, you want to draft your 4th running back and you're like, Nick, this guy is literally 3 rounds of value. I don't know why he's in the 5th round. Do it. Other than that, it's not a good thing to strive for. So we've now got 2 different studies that suggest RB0 isn't great. Again, assuming 2 running backs, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. As I have said in every single RB0 video since I started doing it in 2015, RB0 should only be used in full PPR leagues, and ideally ones, very ideally ones, where you can start 4. In both of these studies, you're only starting 3 wide receivers at most. If you're in a league that starts 3 wide receivers and has a flex spot, or 2 wide receiver spots and 2 flex spots, meaning you're allowed to start 4 of them, now we're talking. Now maybe you can use RB0. Most of you play in formats where it's 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. It's not an amazing strategy. It's just not valuable enough, doesn't provide you enough value to skip out on running back that long. But the real winner here is 2 running back. Again, among all the builds I simulated, 2 running backs only make up 38% of the total, but they're found in 53% of top performing builds. Every single other start is found in a lower percent of top builds than they make up of the entire sample, meaning that all other builds are slightly hurting you unless you're starting with 2 running backs in the first 5. I can also say that in terms of just the first round, no matter what you do for the rest of your draft, by taking a running back in round 1, you are averaging 0.6 half PPR points per game better than taking a wide receiver, and 1.3 half PPR points per game better than tight end. Quarterback, no, don't be taking a quarterback in round 1. This is not a super flex video. No quarterbacks in round 1. That is very suboptimal. So I can confidently say running back in round 1, best over time, doesn't mean you need to do it. You can still draft 2 running backs in the first 5 rounds and not draft one in the first round. Obviously, you've got 4 more rounds to take 2. But on average, if there's a running back there as the best available player, it is best over time to take that running back. And I can also say again, 2 running backs, first 5 rounds. After that, so after we're outside the top 5 rounds, it's not entirely important when you take running back, but aiming for 6 to 7 total in a regular 15 or 16 round draft, that is what the vast majority of you will play in. that's best. 6 and 7 running backs are represented in a higher percentage of top builds than they make up of overall builds, which cannot be said for any other number of total running backs. So again, running back is optimal to start with. You probably want 2 in the first 5 rounds. You probably want in a 15 or 16 round draft to end with 6 or 7 total running backs. I want to close by pointing out that just because a strategy isn't optimal doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's risky. RB0 is a very risky build. But in 2015, you basically locked in a championship or at least second place if you used it. And robust RB isn't what we should be striving for. We should be striving for 2 running backs in the first 5 rounds. But if you think this year is going to play out like 2016, like 2017, maybe you think people are taking running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends too early. It's pushing back running backs, and you think there's an edge in going with 3 in the first 5 rounds, do it, right? Don't lock yourself into a strategy and say, well, it's slightly more optimal. If you've got to take, go with it. Again, the data says strive for 2 in the first 5 rounds, 6 to 7 in total. But if your gut says something differently, trust yourself. You're not going to lose your league because you added 1 extra running back in the first 5 rounds. Also, please know, this is an ongoing study. Every single day, I'm doing simulations. I'm adding to this research. And if you want to help or you want to see, hey, maybe you think there's a build that's optimal, there's a Google form in the description box down below. You can fill it out as many times as you want, and I'll do my best to simulate as many of those responses as I can, and I'll post those to the website. Basically, they go into the back end of an app that I built that you can use when drafting, and it's going to tell you, given how you've started off the draft, what the best position is for you to draft in the next round, and then what it's best for you to do late. So if you want to check that out and a whole lot more, you can see all of that at my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So I will be back tomorrow to break down, I believe it's going to be 2 or 3 running backs. I don't have the players yet, but it's going to be a player breakdown video. Friday is going to be my favorite wide receivers in drafts right now. And then Saturday, of course, all Saturday videos, risers or fallers. This week, we're going to go over the biggest risers in ADP over the last 2 weeks. But that, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.